Hello, it's time for my follow-up on my question on the definition of a fashion watch. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So I'm going to break this down into three categories. First, I'm just going to read some little snippets of comments that folks made that I found interesting. Secondly, I am going to read my favorite comment. And lastly, give some closing thoughts, maybe a little bit of opinion. So let's get started. First off, some of the comments I found interesting. William wrote that it's aesthetic, not horological, obviously referring to a fashion watch. Not So Obvious Watches wrote that it is ultimately disposable. Lee made a comment, everyone's taste develop as they mature. And Ken wrote that they were cheaply made with Chinese movements. And I think that covers, and I think those comments there cover a lot of the general consensus of a fashion watch, I think, as we define it, in terms of, more meant on how it looks. That is something that you're probably not going to replace per se or fix up. You might even worry about changing the battery in it. And that it is something that possibly could be like a gateway type of thing where your taste developed and you move forward. And unfortunately, a lot of the stuff is probably made abroad as cheaply as possible. Next, let me look at my favorite comment. Okay, for my favorite comment, I'm going to read it, and this is from Lee. To the general public, being fashionable or in fashion sounds like a good thing. But to watch people, the term fashion watch is mildly disparaging. Reserved for watches with skin-deep beauty and no substance, or even worse, those that are solely created for tricking the uninitiated into spending too much for something flashy but low quality. But as you always remind us, Mike, we should stay positive. I try to avoid characterizations like this because it can seem judgmental or someone else's reasons for choosing something. It can seem judgmental for someone else's reasons for choosing something. Sorry about that. Everyone's tastes mature as they learn, especially with regard to things that are a bit esoteric, like watch movements, design language, etc. Very good job, Lee. I definitely appreciate that input. Okay, so lastly now, some of my thoughts, and I think my thought process is very similar to how Lee talked about in terms of the fact that it can be a disparaging term. Almond Reviews and Not So Obvious Watches also, when they commented on it, were some of their comment was along the same type of mindset. And kind of going into this, that's what I was kind of thinking a little bit. I think a lot of times, again, within the watch community itself, trying to be careful how I say this, but I would caution folks to be careful about throwing out terms that can be perceived as derogatory. And like I said, I think a few of you picked up on that. I think there are people in this hobby that are at different places, and certainly as we stay in this hobby longer, we want to encourage folks. We have different budgets for stuff. We have different knowledge levels. So it's really an interesting thing when you think about the whole watch community. And I'm of the mindset in general, and I'll leave on this note, is that we just don't want to do anything that discourages somebody in this hobby by picking on what they have, using a disparaging term. And if you're watching this and you're involved in communities that do that, you may just want to find something else. Now that's not the same as joking with somebody too as well. So there's a fine line there, but at the same token, the folks that I migrate to are people that are reflective, that can have great collections, have a range of collections, but be more retrospective or introspective, I should say, about how they approach the hobby. Ahmed, I think, does a very good job of that. He's got a killer collection, but at the same token, his demeanor and the way that he talks about watches is very inviting. And so I think more folks need to kind of adopt that, especially ones that have killer collections and frankly avoid the snobbery. That doesn't do any good to anybody too as well. So sorry about being on the soapbox. That's it for now. I'm going to drop another question in a little bit. I really appreciate everybody watching. Very rainy day here in Tennessee. I'm getting ready to close the pool down. It's summer's winding down. But as always, stay positive, make friends, enjoy the journey. I'll talk to y'all real soon. Take care.